Just an FYI, David, you see who's up joining us.
Eric,
There he is.
that means if we take any action, we have to do a roll call. Okay.
Get started.
We are
Yep.
recording?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is the Enfield Planning Board. It is Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. I am calling the meeting to order at 6:30. We are located in the Enfield Public Works Building. And we are also on the Teams video platform for those coming in remotely. Members present from my left,
Linda Jones,
Dan Kiley.
I'm David Frack.
Tim Jennings,
Nate Miller,
Bill Griffin, alternate.
Ben Jorgensen, alternate.
Rob Taylor staff.
And coming in remotely,
Eric Russell.
you can hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Very good.
Okay.
Where is he?
Whitney will not be joining us, but we're doing the recording, so she can.
Okay, that's fine. And, yeah, so we have no hearings, we have no conceptuals. Dan Regan has who is the head, not the head, the chair, current chair of the zoning board, has asked to give us an update on their, activities and what he sees as where they're going over the next year or a few months. So that was unfortunately left off of the agenda. So with your permission, board members, I'd like to call him to the table and have him be the first of the reports. Go ahead, Dan.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate you squeezing me in where I was accidentally left off the agenda.
That was me.
That was, I didn't. So this is relatively informal, what I had in mind. In speaking with folks on the ZBA, as well as looking at some best practices in other towns, it seems as though there's an opportunity for increased transparent communication. I don't think anybody would ever say we have too much of that. So I did approach the select board and asked them if they would be interested in sitting down and talking a bit. Not something we'll do all the time, maybe once a year, maybe as needed. Beyond that, I approached David and asked him the same. He said, sure, just don't be too long-winded, Dan, which I won't be. I'm kidding.
He cajoled me,
Yeah.
forced me into this.
So thank you for the opportunity. I realize it's, everybody's busy and it's the summer, but the objective is nothing more than that, just communication. So let me start with some of the changes that we've had on the zoning board. In March, we had an election and Mike Dean is no longer on the board, nor is Madeline Johnson. They have been replaced with a woman by the name of Tiffany Adams, who is fantastic. She works in the land use office in Lebanon. So she comes with some experience. She doesn't oversell that experience, but she brings that nice perspective for us. We also have a gentleman joining us who has been on the board in the past with Tim Linehan. He is now on the board. And
his name,
I'm sorry,
and his name.
Tim Linehan.
Oh, Tim,
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, maybe I wasn't clear. I'm sorry. Yeah, Tim Linehan.
the comma in the wrong place.
No problem, no problem. Shortly after the election in March, Bob Cusick did resign. He had been an alternate. So he has resigned from the board. So the board now consists of Tiffany, Tim, Susan Brown, Bill Finger, who's the vice chair, and myself as the chair, with Sally as our one alternate. So knowing that we were down one alternate, we did want to go through I'm kind of a structured kind of guy. So we wanted to go through what he left. Ben and I were together on the Emergency Services Advisory Committee. So we did want to go through a structured formal process to find another alternate. And the process began on May 15th and it culminated last night. We had two candidates it's Jessica L. Justice Voigt, who's a PA at the hospital in the emergency services group there. And Kyle Hasbacker, who is a gentleman that I'm going through the Enfield Citizens Academy right now. And he's in that group. So my biased, I'll be honest, and I knew it going in, and I explained my bias to my fellow members of the board, was that I only wanted one additional alternate. I'm a strong believer that we owe it to the applicants to be efficient. And if you start getting too many people around the table, you start becoming inefficient, and that's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the citizens of the town. I will say that these two candidates were so strong that they changed my opinion. And I said, you know what, I'm willing to risk some of that efficiency. And we had to talk about as a team, as a zoning board, being a little bit more concise in our questioning, in our discussions, so that we could welcome two alternates, a total of three alternates, and still give the applicant the justice that they deserve. So we will be moving forward with three alternates and 5 members of the zoning board. I'm very excited about these two applicants. I think they're going to be fantastic. Rob and I have already started talking about, okay, what does the training look like? Right now, our training is good, but again, it's not formal. So I look to formalize that in many ways, working with Rob. I know he's sitting next to me, but I'll say nice things about him anyways. Rob, fantastic in the board in general, as well as with this process going through, looking for the alternates, advertising, screening, and getting these people nailed down. So I'm confident that the training for them will be fantastic as well. So since our first meeting as a new board in April, we've had an interesting mix of only 4 cases, but they've been very interesting, very diverse. And I'm happy with the way that we are approaching the cases, and that people are coming in. We talk about a lot that we're a quasi judicial board, and you need to come in with an open mind. And you need to listen to the evidence that presents to you. Yes, you can do your homework. You can look at the RSAs that are in question. You can look at the ordinances that are in question. And then you can ask questions of the applicant, and it's up to the applicant to convince you that they should get a variance. The responsibility is on them, and we're very clear to them with that. But I like the way that we as a board are functioning right now. I have made some mistakes as a new chair. Nothing that's insurmountable, nothing that's going to get us in trouble, but I have made a couple of mistakes that we've been able to work through. And I'm becoming more comfortable in that role. And we also talk a lot as a group about training opportunities. If I were to, I don't know specifically, but I think if I were to look around the state at other zoning boards, I would say we're probably a little bit less tenured than many at the current time. So we realize that, and we talk about training that runs through New Hampshire Municipal Association. They do a monthly lunch and learn, and we try to all participate in that, not as a group, but just one-offs. And we talk a lot about that. We also, I personally have been, and I know other members have done the same, have been dialing into the New Hampshire Municipal Association more often and asking them questions when we have a case coming up that we're looking at RSA and maybe we're not familiar with it, asking them just about case law and that sort of thing. And it's been wonderful. I think that's a great service that we pay for as a town. We did bring in our lawyer at one meeting where we had some changes in the last election with some new zoning. We brought in a lawyer. He was actually on Zoom. And between him and Rob, we went through all the changes, made sure that people had questions about them. We talked about some hypotheticals. And I feel like we're well grounded now in the changes that came from the planning board initially and then through the citizens. So we've made a couple of other changes. We did. Does someone have a question? No. Okay. We did take the opportunity to take a look at our ZBA fees. And what we saw was that we hadn't updated them since 2021. So we said, well, let's take a look. And we looked at it a couple of different ways. One is we looked at a number of different towns that surround us. We saw what their fees were. I said this to the zoning board, but I'll repeat it here. As I was doing that, I heard my mother's voice saying, I don't give a darn what the other kids are doing. So we also took a look at how much does it cost us to actually have an applicant come and sit down in front of us. We looked at the time of our administrative staff and how many hours they spend. If we charge too little, we're essentially asking every other citizen in town to throw in a couple of bucks for an application. If we charge too much, then we're trying to make money off it. And that's never the idea, is to make money off of zoning. So we tried to hit that sweet spot. I don't know that we got it exact, but our fee had been $150. And after going through what I think was a very careful process, we raised our fee to $225 now. So that change has happened. We also have taken the opportunity to look at our rules of procedure. The last time these were updated was in 2021. And we again want to go through a careful process. We don't just want to start shouting out, okay, here's ways that we can do it. So we've asked Tiffany Adams, one of our newer members, to take the lead on this. And she has gone through first by starting saying what empowers us to be able to change these rules. And we looked at the RSAs, we became comfortable with that. And I've had conversations with David throughout. And we now have everybody, they have homework as of last night to go now look at the rules of procedure and walk through it and see if there's anything that jumps out at them. There's a couple of things already that people have raised, and we'll take the time, go back, look at it. At the next meeting, before the next meeting, send them to Tiffany. She'll compile them all, and we'll begin to have a conversation about that. There might be some varying points of view, but we'll work through that. We'll let you know as that evolves. We're also keeping an eye on Concord. We know that the governor has a number of things on her desk that could impact both the ZBA as well as the planning board. And we're watching to see what happens there. We may bring our lawyer back. We may bring the folks from New Hampshire Municipal Association back after those changes have happened, just to say, kind of walk us through your thinking on this. And it might be an opportunity to have some further conversation between the two boards after that happens. I am open to questions, thoughts, comments from first the board and then the public, if anybody has anything. The other thing I'd like to say, I meant to say this at the beginning, I know this guy gives you an update every time you guys get together, what's happening, and that's wonderful. And I don't mean to suggest that I in any way think that that is not adequate. It certainly is, but I just thought this would be a good opportunity to come in, like I said, once a year and chat a bit. So questions, maybe I could answer. Yes.
Well, I'd just like to say that, you are putting your very positive mark on our ZBA. What I've seen you do and what you told us about tonight are all very positive moves. I think it's going to increase the professionalism of the ZBA. Going to make the decisions that they arrive at rational and based on the laws as they exist, rather than on people's emotional reaction to an applicant or an application. And I think all of those are positive things for the town. They will give us a reputation for fairness. They will keep us away from lawsuits. And I'm looking forward to working with you as we progress.
Thank you. I appreciate those words. I still have a lot to learn, and I'm trying to continue to be aware of that.
Yes. Tim.
And you're where you're writing the zoning ordinance, I'm sure. The section on the ZBA that's in there, it's a whole article. I'm hoping you guys can, I'm not speaking for the board here, but I think it needs some attention. You may already have that in motion. But certainly to look at it, compare it to what state laws currently say and so forth, and then your rules of procedure, your authorities, et cetera. This should just say, it should say what you guys think it ought to say, and it's subject to the law. So were we thinking that to ask the ZBA to take this article and massage it and bring it back to us and say, this is what we.
Well, I don't think we've had any discussion on it, but from my personal point of view, I think now that you put it on the table, we should certainly have that discussion and, perhaps we can take a vote right here and now, have a little discussion. Everybody wanna talk about the concept of having the ZBA handle the zoning board section of the zoning ordinance?
I'd like to certainly hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
I don't think they should rewrite it without our looking at it, but, they're dealing with it more directly than we are, so I'd like to see what they see.
Any thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other thing we've done in the past is we've gone to the ZBA and said, you guys having problems with something that's in the ordinances where it's not cut and dry what it says in there.
Yeah.
So that we can then look at it and say, okay, let's clean it up. Sometimes it's language, sometimes it's over here it says this and over there it says something that's diametrically opposed to it. You guys are the ones that find that more often than we do, because you guys are basing decisions on what's in the ordinance.
Okay. So, let me just comment quickly on both of those. I have to admit, I can't sit here and tell you exactly what's in the ordinances right now related to the ZBA. I need to do some work on that. It's just not top of mind. And,
It normally happens when there's a hearing,
yeah, when there's an,
And-
yeah,
you know,
right.
when it comes up.
Yeah.
It's normally doesn't jump to the top because there's 140 pages.
I think I can speak for the rest of the ZBA that, we would like to have some input,
Yeah.
where that input starts and stops. We could figure it out. But yeah, we'd like to give you our opinions on it. Yeah, for sure. And then I'm not aware, Dan, of any problems that
No.
we've had that I need to raise, but thank you. I'm gonna put that down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now,
Because why I bring it up now is we need that, we need to have stuff by, well, with SB2, we're probably gonna need stuff by October in order to get it into the, public hearings. Because the public hearings are gonna have to be earlier this year also.
Jim, anything to add before I go on to me?
I'd like to ask a question.
Dr. Theis, we are not taking comments from the public just yet. I'm soliciting input from my board members. When I'm then done with that, then I will ask for public comments. Okay,
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you coming here and giving us this update. It's good to know what's happening. Dan mentioned the scenario of something being unclear. Because the zoning board, at the end of the day, you're a panel of judges. You're there to evaluate variance criteria according to the facts of a case. And every case is different. And so, I guess, kind of, Dan bringing up the idea of something being unclear that hinders your ability to be a good judge. I guess the other thing, I would be interested in and not tonight, but, over time, as we communicate. Is there something that is clear in the ordinance that you're seeing a lot of repetitive variance applications for the same clause and the same issue, and you're finding those variance applications to be meritorious? You're granting variances for the same provision of the same, if there's something like that, that's kind of a, repetitive type of issue that's coming up repeatedly, that may be something that we can help address, if you're finding those applications to be meritorious repeatedly for the same types of issues. So I would certainly welcome that type of feedback from the zoning board as well.
Bill, any thoughts?
I think collaborative effort would be a great thing, solve some of the issues like that. It'd be great to communicate together more than nail things down that have been issues and prevent some.
And Ben, any thoughts?
I think that was very comprehensive. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, I will take questions from the public on this topic. Dr. Theis.
Oh, I just want a clarification. If any of the bills that take the local community's authority away from development have passed and are signed by the government, or the governor, I should say, where does that leave the planning board and the ZBA and anybody else who tries to control development here in Enfield?
Well, that leaves us up the creek without a paddle, basically. State law, whether we like it or not, supersedes anything that the town has by way of its own ordinances. And until those state laws get reversed, we're stuck with them. And zoning board has to apply those laws to their decisions. They're bound by.
Do you know if the governor has signed into law any of those bills that have been passed?
I could not give you a correct, up-to-date answer, so I'm going to say, no, I do not know definitively what she has signed and what she has not signed. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your question. Anything else?
No, sure.
Okay,
No, thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Eric Russell, do you have a select board report?
We had a very brief meeting a couple weeks ago. Just going through tax abatements to get those done in a timely manner. And then our regularly scheduled meeting, first meeting of July, was canceled to work around vacations and such. So we'll meet in 2 weeks. Will be our next meeting.
Okay. I guess Rob is out of the room. I will give a legislative update. As you know, the legislative session is officially over. On the 26th, I think it was, of June, we had our final legislative session, at which time the budget, which had all sorts of policy amendments tacked onto it, squeaked by one vote, and that one vote that broke the tie was cast by the Speaker of the House. In terms of bills that might affect us, where am I here? Where is this? Okay, what I'm gonna do is basically talk about a series of bills that the Municipal Association has been following very closely. One of them, and I'm just gonna touch on the ones that affect land use. One of them is HB 457, which is the bill that mandates, group or congregate living in every zoning district that allows residential housing. The association has spearheaded a letter to the governor, and about 24 municipalities have signed it, including Enfield, asking her to veto it and giving a lot of very specific reasons why that should happen. Let's see what else. I had highlighted these, but they didn't save. Or they didn't save the highlights. Another bill is House Bill 428, which basically prohibits a municipality from enforcing a local building code if the code was not submitted to the Building Code Review Board by July 1st of this year. Voters. Here's one that definitely did get signed into law, and that's the one that requires, members of zoning boards and planning boards to recuse themselves from sitting on a panel in a quasi judicial setting if they have participated in a similar hearing on the other board. That way we don't have people that are, essentially, if they're sitting on a zoning board and they've made a decision on the planning board, as a planning board member, they would not then be allowed to, in essence, sit in judgment of their own decision. And that is actually a bill that I co-sponsored.
David,
Yes,
I know we tabled the rules of procedure discussion at the last meeting, but that seems like that is an item that we would want to add to the recusal section of the rules of procedure.
we have to,
Yes,
because it is
yeah,
state law.
yep, it is now, but yeah, I'm just,
Yeah,
put it on the chalkboard of things to do,
Yeah,
when we're updating.
absolutely.
Procedure, so.
The
Absolutely.
select board in the past has said, make a decision, either you're running for zoning board and getting on zoning board, or you can't be on both,
That,
neither as an alternate nor as a member.
that works in a town
Right,
of Enfield.
right.
There are
but
a
in their-
lot of smaller
Oh, yeah.
towns where
I know,
it's really tough to get members
Yeah.
and people have to serve on both boards.
Yeah.
Let's see. That is roughly it, and I apologize, I did not save this correctly, so my highlighting got lost. And so be it. Rob,
Land use, community development. I have a list here of, real estate transfers. This is a lot. Very, very busy. Real estate right now is sort of red hot. It's been a lot of, activity there. Getting calls from people, hey, I just bought this property, want to know what I can do. Can I subdivide? Can I have a business? So those are the things that are certainly taking up a bunch of our office time. We think we'll be having, a Laramie Farms application for your first meeting in August. I've talked to, Carl Dubay, the guy that you guys have spoken with a couple of times. That's what he's shooting for. It's not a normal day for our hearings, but I offered it as they want to get started. And he wasn't quite ready for your second meeting this month, but he thought he could be for the first meeting next month. So That's interesting. We should be seeing some detail. I'll keep you guys in the loop on that, obviously.
And that'll be a design review.
Yes, yep. Next week is the third class of the Citizens Academy. You heard a little bit of positivity, and in some ways Dan took some of the updating that I would give you right now from last night's ZBA meeting, but you can see we're in really good hands now with the ZBA, so I'm excited to work with Dan. He's fantastic. Let's see, zoning enforcement. There's been several zoning enforcement issues on my desk. We've had some success. Right up the road here on Lock Haven Road, we had complaints about a huge mess in front of the house with several junk cars and refuse strewn about. Took action against them and we got it cleaned up. I was really, really happy about that. That was a sort of a win. It's not easy, as you guys know, to get a win in this business. It takes a lot of time. I saw on listserv just today, there's a lot of trouble that people are complaining about. I can tell you that behind the scenes, there's a lot of work happening. That is not an easy case. It's down on Shaker Hill Road. There is a squatter in that place, and the squatter is the problem. And if you guys know, there's a pendulum there with legal and state law that either the tenants have lots of rights or the landlords have lots of rights. I think right now we're seeing tenants with a lot of rights, even though it's not even a real tenant, it's a squatter. So we've been dealing with that. Police have been involved, health inspector, there's a lot of garbage. It's a slow process, but it's steady, and I can assure you that we are working on it, and it will be hopefully rectified soon. But it is not easy. It's very complicated, as you guys might imagine. So working on that. I did get another place on Route 4A. Junk cars got cleaned up down there with a letter to the owner. That was another little win. Just received a complaint today of campers on Route 4A down towards the old junkyard down there. And that seems to be a little bit of a trend line. Again, I think it's related to the housing situation. People are taking up residency in campers. Obviously, this time of year, kind of easy to do that. It's not a big problem. We certainly look at it as a big problem as it get back towards the colder months. I've been dealing with one down on Bog Road, a camper that's been in use for quite a while now. So I've communicated with them. If you guys know of anything, heads up, radar, if you see anything out there, let me know. Obviously, if I can take action proactively, we want to do that. Obviously, I will also take action. Anybody calls me up or anything that I see if I'm out and about. I did have some time this evening to just take a ride around and look at a few things. I mean, again, that's a sort of ongoing thing that we're always working on here, trying to keep the town looking good and keeping people following the rules and so forth. But Nate can back me up on it. It's not an easy thing. It's very slow and can be sort of frustrating to people like, why can't they just clean it up? Well,
Yeah.
that's not how it works. We have to sort of take the process through to the end. And so we're working on a few complicated, as I just indicated. So excited about, you guys will probably be seeing the Shaker Museum soon. I did have a great conversation with one of their people today. As you guys may or may not know, they're repurposing, not really repurposing, but refreshing the use of the La Salette facility. The performance hall that is in the back is basically coming online as more of a intentional use. I think when the shrine was there, they used it occasionally. And I think that the Shaker Museum has seen it as a real opportunity for them to be able to, it's got plenty of parking, it's got 300 seat capacity, it's got a really high-end sound system. They're, as we speak, installing bathrooms, which it never had. And they're also contracted with an engineering firm to plan out the connection of their facility, the La Salette facility, to our sewer system, which they've always just had a sort of little small septic system there. Getting them on our sewer system is going to be a big win. And so that is happening as we speak. The bathrooms have already been installed. We're likely in the next month or so, we'll see a contractor digging the trench to actually get the connection out to the street. So that's another big win. I have asked them that, as things sort of come to what they want to do with that facility, that we may be doing a revised site plan for the La Salette facility as it's changing from what it was to what it's going to be. And they're very much on board with that. It's not a kind of soft pedal a little bit with them, but it's, it's easy. We can work with you, and we're willing to work with you. And so they're great. We'll work with you, and it's gonna involve some upgraded lighting, and obviously they're upgrading the performance space and so forth. So working on that. That'll probably be a site plan review for you guys in the next 3, 4, 5 months looking out. As you guys know, let's see, I am working, the brewery is, soft opening this past weekend, right here in town. Saturday, open the doors up and let people come in and have beer. And so kind of excited about that. Again, soft opening, he didn't make any big deal about it. It's just like, we're gonna open the door, people come in. It's kind of people who found it that way. He's hoping to make his official grand opening the same weekend as Old Home Days for us, which I think is a great complimentary event. I did actually visit over the weekend with my girlfriend, the Sunapee location of Optimistic, which is where he's selling almost all of his beer at this moment. Really cool space. If you have some opportunity to go down and see that, kind of cool how Sunapee and Enfield now have this cool relationship. I did speak to Thomas Morrill, the guy that's getting ready to open the coffee shop. So he's real close there too. I would say in the next few weeks that we'll be seeing his shingle out. He and I are working on signage as we speak, and that's happening. Jumping back, if anything else is jumping out at me. Working on 79E. You guys are familiar with that? So the brewery has applied for 79E relief. That's a tax program whereby a facility that's getting repurposed can apply, especially in the downtown, can apply for some tax relief for a finite period. I'll be going to the selectmen's meeting in a couple weeks with a recommendation and a memo and so forth as to what that entails. See how that goes and see what the select board is supportive of. Ultimately, it's their call as to what and how much and how long the relief is. Been working a little bit with the Old Home Days people. They're doing some really good work to get ready for that big celebration. And we'll be talking a little bit later on. David and I had a conversation about the third-party engineering review, so that'll come up later. That's about it right now. I'm happy to answer anybody's questions. I want to get you guys going on the next item. So anybody have any questions? I'm happy to.
How about the land transfers? Is there certain areas that there's more of that happening than others, or is it just kind of spread out all over?
It's kind of
And we
spread out.
see a
all
lot
over.
more on the lakes.
Lot of lakes for sure. Those are the ones that I tend to take the most calls on because it's the most complicated. The land use on the lake, as you know, is very complicated. There's very few forming lots. So most of the lots are non-conforming and people are always like, what can I do? What can I do? Another thing I'll give a quick update is the sewer septic system ordinance that the select board implemented that's now in effect here in Enfield. We've been busy with that. That's happening. Thanks a lot to Bill and his crew, the lake associations. We're getting tons and tons of inspection reports, which has been really cool. Most of the feedback I'm getting is very positive. There's not a lot of people that are super disgruntled about it. There are people that are like, hey, seems reasonable. And thanks to Bill and others, they found a company that will come in and sort of group inspections together. So it's very affordable. It's $250 if you do eight grouped together. So they're in town for a day. And I've seen some of these reports, really, really thorough. They're popping the lid off the septic tank, checking the baffling and the depth and the scum layer and the solids. And then they're scoping into the D box and they're sampling the leach field bed. And I mean, it's really thorough. And to me, this is what I'm saying about that. It's really good stuff. And as I said, for the most part, the lake people that I'm talking to that are delivering things are satisfied. It's, you know, it's something that's gonna benefit Lake people. As much as it's a hindrance to them, it's also a benefit to them. We have some people like, oh, you're gonna come at me with fines, you know, it's like, that's not what we wanna do. It's obviously a tool to make sure we get compliance. But we're gonna work with people and do as much as we can. I've had a few people like, can you recommend a designer if I need to get something improved? And I've got a list of septic system designers and share that and try to work with people. And as I said, it really has not been a negative. It's actually been a very positive thing. And I just think just the touch point with us and the lakefront people has been really good. So I think all in all, that's been a win for us for sure. So, yeah.
Who decided that Enfield was gonna sign on to the New Hampshire Municipal Association letter? On the,
I do not know who made that decision. Ed is the person who signed it, and I'm assuming that, well,
with all due respect,
let-
New Hampshire Municipal Association has never seen a regulation that they liked. Well, they were against a good dozen of them.
I would ask Eric if there was any discussion of that at the select board level.
Can you remind me which one specifically we signed on for?
That was the letter on the congregate housing, allowing allowing any number of unrelated people to occupy the same house dwelling unit wherever residential dwelling is allowed.
Okay, I don't think, we did discuss some, I don't think we discussed that one specifically. But I missed a meeting a month ago, so it's possible it was there, but we didn't discuss that one specifically. There was another one that we discussed that was not related to land use. But I don't remember discussing that particular one.
Okay,
That was the Durham Hanover one.
yeah, that's the Durham one.
Right.
Exactly. Anything else, Rob?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Renee has been sitting there very patiently for 45 minutes. And maybe next time we'll schedule you to come about half hour after we start.
Yeah.
So we can get all of this, and we will do the minutes approval after we get done with Renee and the hop grid stuff.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you. Everyone had a fun and safe 4th of July. So I think, the last meeting, we talked about land uses and, group of us had met and discussed, last week before the 4th. Tim, Nate, myself, Rob. That's it, right? Was it just the 4 of us? Am I missing? There's someone else on the call?
That's right. On the Zoom call.
On the Zoom call that we did.
We had a meeting,
Yeah.
Dan, Tim and myself.
Okay, yeah. So, but yeah, so started tackling the land use list. So I think the goal for tonight, if I'm remembering correctly, and if the board so chooses, is the land use, pinning that down so that you can kind of get a better feel for the
Yep.
uses that are in the new proposed districts.
Yep.
And then work on that. That's kind of the goal for this evening, workshop.
Yeah, and it might be good to just pull that right up
It-
on the screen and
Mhm.
I did two printed copies. It's Tim.
I was thinking too, I'm happy to jump up on the dry erase board too and write stuff down and tally if we have votes or things like that. So whatever we feel like would be the best to help keep track as we work through some of these. Tim, if you have any comments from our meetings, and you worked a
Yeah.
lot on gathering this together, so thank you.
I should introduce this,
Mhm,
why this looks the way it does.
mhm.
Well, Rob knows.
Tell the rest of us.
Yes, what we need it up there.
yeah, ideally we'd put it on the screen and be able to
Right, go right down through the
go
list.
right down.
But I guess since you have a copy in front of you,
Yeah, let's go with the hard copy until Rob
Okay.
sneaker nets the digital file.
so, what we did was on the column on the left was determined after looking at, some land use codes that they first suggested to us at the last meeting, which turned out to be mainly DOT codes that are used by
Well,
traffic studies.
yeah, I mean, that was an ITE set of codes. I followed up with another, I had an example from a rural community in the southern part of the state that I thought was reasonable, a list, and between all of the above, we sort of cobbled them together.
That's right. So we took those two lists and then Eric took the lead in just putting them in a table here, and that's what's on the right. But some of those uses didn't seem to quite fit in field or maybe the wording was something that was not familiar to us. So the little subgroup then took the list on the right and created the list on the list on the left, and then created the list on the right, which are the result of that meeting. So we consolidated some stuff, eliminated some things, added some stuff. And I was taking notes during that meeting, and then we adjourned and I said, I'll clean this up and put it together in a table. And that's what I did here. But in the process of doing that, some other things that we didn't talk about came to mind, and those are the ones highlighted in green. So the subgroup didn't really sink their teeth into the ones in green. And we decided just to bring the list as it is to the board now and go through it. But Nate had a really good suggestion about how to do that. Want to do-
Yeah, well, I was thinking, we could go kind of line by line and talk about how and why we ended up with the things on the right, save the green things that Tim added. But, I think our time is probably best used here by filling in this table.
Yeah.
And then if there are questions about the terms, we can talk about those as we get to them. Why did you come up with this, or do we need this, or, but I think if we just kind of have this be a work session where we fill in this table, which those, I guess there's some codes there in the second from the top left. Allowed by right, special exception, not allowed, conditional use. Do we need conditional use?
We don't have
We
it
don't have
yet.
it yet.
However, we have had discussions about conditional use.
Right.
And implementing that as one of our special, whatever you call them, unique land use, innovative land use measures, controls. And we haven't really come to a conclusion on that, but from what I am remembering of the discussion, if we start allowing conditional use, that brings the decision to the planning board versus special exception, which puts the decision onto the ZBA. And I think the consensus, or maybe it's just my own feeling, is that when we are looking at an application, if we had a conditional use tool that we could implement, we would have a much better context for making a decision than a zoning board would, because they're just being asked to rule on a particular aspect of the application without really delving into the context of the entire application. So for my purposes in filling out this form, I treated special exception and conditional use as one and the same. And certainly we can talk about that as a future, topic to discuss, but that's kind of where I am. Sure.
So there's in the structure of the zoning ordinance that we're working on, pulling verbiage out of the city of Lebanon's ordinance, there is a section on conditional use. So it's a pretty simple thing to just stick it in there and, okay, now we got it. If the voters approve it, of course. The thing I don't really understand though about conditional use is it seems to be applying only to residential kind of issues. And I'm not sure that, say, if you had a business, you wanted to have a conditional use, let's say, have gas pumps or whatever. I don't know, I think we need some background study on what that means and how it's, maybe, you know.
So maybe the way of doing this tonight is to do something along the lines of what David said, which is you kind of have special exception and conditional uses. Some extra layer of review is needed here, whether it happens, under the purview of the planning board or under the purview of the zoning board. I think we could probably work out, we could refine it. So maybe for tonight's purposes, we say, allowed by right, not allowed, additional review needed. Or, and then we could sort out whether that fits into a conditional use category or a special exception category.
We talked about talking with the CBA about what their portion of the rewrite would be in their area. Talking to them about it. Would that be something we could talk to them about to make sure we're not overlapping the same things? I mean, just so we're not making rules against other rules.
Yeah,
in that.
I think it's more of a process question of who gets to do the deciding. And certainly, we can talk with the ZBA about that and tell them this is what we are thinking should happen. And I'll broach that with Dan, next time he and I sit down for coffee.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but conditional use would be appealable to the zoning board.
Absolutely.
Actually, no.
Actually, yes.
No?
Any
Yes.
decision we make is appealable to the zoning board.
Yeah,
Well,
Because they could say, well, yeah, but we want it by right.
I only say that because that's not the way it's set up in the city, but I don't know if the
Right.
cities is just particularly because they're a city, but there is wording in there that it's not I think you'd have to go to a variance.
Well, but in this case, if we gave somebody a conditional use, a member of the public could appeal it to the zoning board.
Well, that may be.
Because it's outside of the zoning ordinance.
I would propose, just in the interest of time, A, N, and R tonight.
Yeah.
Allowed, not allowed,
Allowed,
review needed.
Reviewable.
okay,
Right,
I
yeah,
like that.
okay.
Yeah, I guess I would echo that. I think the conditional use, there's certainly lots of information out there that, similar to special exception, you have to set the parameters there. You
Right.
have to say how they need to achieve this, and it has to be, there's case law that has to be like readable and understandable to everyone of what those are, and they are appealable, and it does open the process for abutters and public hearing and all of that. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, at least if we go through it with those
Yeah.
three kind
Yeah.
of concepts, at least it gives us a tangible starting point, because it is
Yeah.
already almost 7:30 and we do
Right.
have some, to get through.
Right.
Yeah. a few
Yeah.
things to go through.
Well, single family dwellings.
Well, all right. I think they should be allowed in all
Yeah,
three of
across
our
the board.
districts.
I agree. Does
Yeah.
anybody disagree with that?
Oh, I should add, that, the reason the, R1, 3, 5, C, industrial and CO, the conservation district are not in this list tonight is because they already have, land uses, as we know, allowed or not allowed.
Right.
And those terms are, the terms they use, are used in the existing ordinance, don't match up with this new list. So, once we get this done, maybe at the next meeting, we'll bring that list to you and we'll have attempted to find a new term that fits the old term or takes the place of the old term. And then we can go through that. That'll be a much quicker exercise.
No, that's good.
Sorry.
Accessory dwelling units follow that, so those, that
Right.
would be
Yep.
A's across the board as well.
Yeah.
Two family,
Across the,
All across the board.
across the board,
multifamily,
across the board.
I've been thinking about multifamily. And they come in lots of different flavors. And what I would like to propose is that multifamily up to a certain size, whether it's 4 units or 8 units or 10 units or some other number, be allowed across the board. And then we create, in essence, an overlay or a couple of overlays where we can have large apartments. And I think that will be palatable to the public and will put to rest some of the objections that, you know, we're in a residential district and they're gonna put a 4-story, 75 unit apartment building right next door to me because they bought 4 lots. Something to think about. And, you know, it would be obviously Laramie Farms, possibly Shed Street, possibly that, large lot in back of, Shaker Auto. That's,
What do you call that, Dave? High density housing versus multifamily, maybe?
you call it that.
Well, multifamily, I think in the no, what we don't have the definitions for these things. What we figured is that this discussion would generate would reveal some of these that we do need to have a more tighter definition.
Yeah.
Multifamily to me means they're all attached together. So whether it's a row of condos or townhouses or it's an apartment building. Whereas a residential, even high density, when you've got houses close together, they're not necessarily attached. They could be, but. Actually,
Can't think of anything more high density than an apartment building.
and again, it may play out, that question may play out when we start to actually define what these are.
So
But
you
it-
need an upper limit for what you're calling multifamily or number of units.
Yeah,
In the village, downtown, and Route 4. And you're not talking 4A, you're not talking commercial district.
I'm just talking about three
Three
districts that we are focusing on for the HOP grant.
Right.
I think the other thing that comes into play here, which we're not really discussing tonight, is your acreage requirements
Right.
per unit, right? So you can only have that high density if you have the acreage available. That's the other kind of caveat to
Well,
that piece, so.
and we haven't voted on this, but I think I got a feeling that there's a general consensus that we didn't want to have any acreage requirements in these 3 districts.
I think that was kind of our discussion, yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of how many units you can put on a particular lot, was going to be limited by every other factor that goes into that, not the acreage.
Setbacks, height,
Parking.
The larger
Parking.
you get, and create something new. We were talking about Main Street and saying, no, we don't need to do acreage because they have the setback, they can't park in front of the house. But what if they have 15 acres? There's a lot right down there with 15 acres.
Yep.
And we have in place something we did not use, which was the
Cluster house.
yes, cluster development.
Yeah.
And that talks about setbacks and percentage of land and the higher density in exchange for conserving the land, which is not what happened with Laramie Farms. So
I think those sorts of land use controls are appropriate for the rural districts, but in the village, in trying to accomplish our goals laid out in the master plan, high density housing, water and sewer. We need to keep that in mind. We're not trying to create swaths of conservation land downtown.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of in the downtown part of this area, the middle column here, downtown, the most flexibility in terms of dimensional requirements, but I do think we should be conscious of ensuring that some guardrails are put in place somehow for certainly the Enfield Village and Route 4 areas. I don't know that we'd want an unfettered free-for-all. I do think that we would hear from the public that they would want some guardrails in place. And it's not to say that at the end of the day, it wouldn't be a significant upzoning for those areas, which it almost certainly would be. But yeah, I think those details, I think, are yet to be hashed out. Whereas this discussion is more of what do we envision occurring in these areas?
So in the interest of time, let's move on to mixed use buildings.
Well, can we at least agree A should be, are allowed in downtown? Or maybe
Multifamily?
maybe we're not even there.
I certainly would have an A downtown. I think I would have an A on Route 4 and then either an A or an R in the village.
Any size.
I'll speak about, I'd put an A in all three of those, and then part of the value of filling out this table relatively quickly is you can then go back and talk about the details of each one. Without going, multifamily, I think should be allowed everywhere in the village, to some extent. And so it's just an A, and then the details need to come, after we complete the table.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Wouldn't
Okay.
that need an R then?
so what?
Wouldn't it need an R instead of an A?
No, I'd say, when I say details need to be allowed, is there's lots more discussion around, your dimensional requirements and that sort of thing. We're not gonna get through those when you're completing the table. This is just, is it allowed or not? And
Right.
it should be allowed, in some
Everyone
form or
that's-
fashion.
It should be allowed so far has said it should be allowed with caveats.
Well, not me.
Well, there's always caveats on every single one of these. Right, there's always gonna be a setback requirement from the road or a driveway requirement. So there's always a caveat. It's just a question of how much we, want to discuss each one. And for the sake of time, if we're going to allow some version of it, this table should have an A. And then it's a detail later that, provides the context for that A. And so I think it should be an A on all three of those for multifamily.
A being in this case allowed by right.
Allowed by right.
By
I
right.
mean,
Allowed by
I'm
right, yeah.
in agreement with Eric, and we can always go back and change it. This is first pass.
What you would then discuss is how many units in the downtown area would be considered appropriate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that would be our next level of depth on doing this table, I guess.
But you're allowing a use that's not defined. I don't know what multi
Yeah.
means in multifamily.
Not yet.
It's a work in progress. We
Okay.
gotta-
Well, we know what the use, we know what the use is. We haven't defined the scale yet.
Correct.
Yeah.
So basically it's an A with an asterisk, so we remember to come back and look
I
at.
highlighted it red. I have a note with it, but
Mixed use buildings, I would think A across the board there. Does anybody not agree with that?
I'm gonna say not in the village.
Was that a new law that just got passed though that requires that?
The new law requires residential in commercial, existing commercial. And I'm thinking there are very few, if any, commercial type buildings in the village. Tim, you probably got a better handle on the inventory than I do.
The Enfield, Village Emporium, the solar place at Kim Quirk, that was commercial on the ground floor and residential upstairs.
But isn't that Route 4?
She's downtown.
It's downtown.
And so outside of the Route 4 and downtown areas in the village.
Yeah.
You have things like, there's some home-based businesses scattered about, some beauty parlors stuck in the basement.
Yeah,
But
but that's primarily a residential. And
Right,
the beauty parlors ancillary home business.
Could you imagine an accountant's office on the bottom floor of a building with an apartment above it?
Yes,
In the village.
I could.
Well, I think the coffee shop, an apartment above it.
Yeah.
And we're talking the village.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so. Not the downtown, not Route 4, but the village, so.
Not done with that one, but another one could.
Yeah.
Do that.
So then we're. Sorry, I guess I was, the only thing I know that's out there right now is you have some residential uses that do have some home-based businesses, a contractor yard. Eric, got some suggestions there?
56 Main is going to go.
That's downtown.
That's downtown.
That's downtown.
How about this for the sake of discussion?
You're not talking. about-
R in the village, A in the other two.
Which isn't downtown. It's
Our meaning
Review.
review.
village is the next loop around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I said no, not allowed, but I buy into art.
Does anybody disagree with that? R in the village, A in the other two. Just a starting point here, we'll
Sure.
continue to refine this.
Go ahead.
Matter of fact, I think if we take more than about 3 minutes, then we should just put an R in the ball.
Right.
Home-based businesses and offices.
I'd allow them everywhere.
Agree. Anybody disagree? Clustered residential housing subdivision.
I would say R in downtown and allow them by right in the other two.
Yeah, that makes sense. There just really isn't any downtown space that would fit.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
Manufactured housing, okay, so this is, the reason, there's a state law that is now coming.
Yeah.
Or is here,
Is here.
Is
That-
here, yeah.
that now defines the term manufactured housing and prescribes. This is one of those instances where the state has made this decision about where manufactured housing, according to that definition, is
Right.
gonna happen. or is going to be permitted to happen. And so I think our thought was the state has made that decision and
It's a,
we're just gonna
We're gonna
mirror
go,
their definition in the
Right.
ordinance and.
Yes.
And allow it accordingly.
and if the state backs off, then we can do otherwise.
Yeah.
So is the definition of manufactured housing, is the intent to think trailer parks or trailers or single wide or double
They
wide?
prescribe a specific definition
Okay.
for it in the
Right.
law, and I don't have the law, maybe Renee.
But
can
it's
pull it
that
up.
kind of housing, not the fact that some places
I think it's a
Build-
definition that encompasses that.
build
Yes.
modules
Yes.
in their
Yeah.
shops.
Yeah.
Which are more stable and strong than.
Right.
Yeah,
stick-built.
it does, the new law does include, factory-built houses.
Right.
As it were, modular.
Do you know that number off?
I don't, I'm sorry, I'm
I
terrible
can
on
look it up.
numbers.
Well, they're built to, housing and urban development building code, not the
That's
the IEC, which the state,
HB
it's a different building.
Yeah. House Bill
Yeah.
65. That's the one. That's.
I'm pretty sure the modulars are
This one went to.
built to the same code as any stick-built house.
They are.
right.
And I had, well, we'll come back to this, but the little wrinkle I had in this, was similar to what I think maybe Linda's thinking. Manufactured housing comes in many different forms. My question is, even with the state law, can you limit those forms? So yes, you can have manufactured housing, for instance. Yes, you can have manufactured housing, but it has to be double wide. You can't put a single. It was just a question. I'm not
Right.
suggesting that, but
I
we
think,
gotta look at that.
I think we gotta dive into
Yeah.
the.
Doesn't have to have a
statute.
pitched roof, basically.
Yeah, or something like that.
I think this is one of the ones that may be on the governor's
Yes.
desk. But has come out of conference committee, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely come out of conference,
674-32.
This is House Bill 685.
674-32 requires municipalities to provide reasonable and realistic opportunities for manufactured housing to exist.
Current statute,
Yeah,
That's
current
correct.
statute, yeah.
can't exclude them. You can't require anything that a regular house doesn't require.
Ben, what was that number?
674-32. I mean to bog this down, sorry.
no,
No.
The sticky one.
Well, I guess we used our 3 minutes.
Yeah, well,
Well, the problem,
I mean, I think we put an asterisk next to this one and see what
Yeah.
comes of that bill,
Yeah.
and whether the governor signs it, because if.
so 674 didn't say it had to be every place.
Yeah, no, the.
It said
House
you had to
Bill-
put a trailer park.
685.
You had to put a trailer park over there.
Everywhere.
Yeah, House Bill 685.
Right, says, yes,
Specific prescriptions of
at which point
what
Lebanon and
manufactured
Enfield put them
housing is,
together.
where it must be allowed.
Right.
So let's put an asterisk and
Yeah,
stay tuned.
move
for
on.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elderly housing every place?
what happened? to
No, we struck
Backyard
that.
animal husbandry.
Wrong call.
No, we're up to animal
Oh, okay, I'm
husbandry.
sorry.
Oh, okay.
Chicken coops.
No roosters or goats next door to me.
And we may not need, I suggest we don't dwell on this, because,
Yeah,
the reason I put the question marks here is this may be, one of those items that's not listed as a land use, but it's in the other part of the ordinance. I just weren't sure where it fit. I think it'll make sense once we get further into it.
okay.
So let's defer on this one.
Yeah. Farm produce stands.
I'm saying not in the village, review downtown and allowed Route 4.
Well, why not downtown?
Well,
Say Pellegrini is one of the
park.
events.
thank you, Linda. Currently, there are parking issues And I think a farm produce stand would be a seasonal thing. Because that's what a farm produce stand is. And you might make better use of the available land by having a permanent store, office, something else.
Well, I don't agree that produce stand would have to be seasonal use. It can be open year round. I mean, if that, like that one that's out on Route 4 heading to Lebanon.
Right.
You know, what the-
Primitive.
Yes, primitive picnic.
primitive picnic.
Right.
Let's say that wanted to move on Main Street, where the, let's say a new business went into the Farm Girls Find or whatever that.
Right,
Yeah.
they wanted to put one,
They
put it
wanted to
there.
put a product stand like that there. And open it year round. Why not?
I guess I'm hung up on the definition of a produce stand.
We may need two definitions for that.
At what point is that a retail business?
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
a retail
I
business,
mean, I'm
Primitive picnic
thinking
is
Tim
more
is
of a-
describing a
more of a
retail
store.
business.
right,
Whereas I view
Although
a
they're seasonal.
farm stand as, I'm gonna put up a kiosk and you're gonna
Right.
pull over and
Yeah.
help yourself. and
it's Karen
deposit some money.
Drexler's
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
4A,
like they have on 4A.
right,
But I've seen even these parking lots, tent goes up, they're
Right.
there all summer selling vegetables. tent
And
goes
they
down.
go away
Yeah.
in.
Why
in the
wouldn't that
fall.
be all right in downtown?
Can I suggest R across the board?
okay,
You could,
just for now,
you could do that.
then we can go back to it.
Hotel or motel?
Every place.
I would say not.
I'm saying not in the village, R for downtown and allowed on Route 4.
Not in the village, but you can allow it downtown where there's no parking.
No, I did not say,
Oh,
I said not in the village. Where are we? Hotels.
Yeah.
Not in the village at all.
okay,
Review on downtown and allowed on Route 4.
I like that.
Okay. Bed and breakfast.
I put down R for village and downtown. And allowed for Route 4.
I think A across the board.
I think it's ARA on this one.
yeah, I'm closer to ARA, I think.
I am too.
I can see it in the village because you don't have the parking downtown
Well, wait a minute.
for bed and breakfast.
We don't want to use that issue to limit land. Because we could be talking about a bed and breakfast that has one room.
Okay,
And if they're proposing 20, then, okay, the site plan review would determine you don't have enough parking or whatever.
So we had one out on the lake, there was only one room, and they just parked
Right.
the driveway.
RRA then?
I think A in the village and
Okay,
A on
yeah, ARA,
ARA.
ARA,
I can see they are,
Just a bed and breakfast. I think we should
Yeah.
allow all of it in all of them.
I agree with Linda.
Yeah, I think that's LA and L three.
I don't care,
We got to vote on this one.
I don't care,
A's across the board.
okay,
We are approaching 25% done.
right,
Tick,
tick, tick,
General retail business.
you know,
Well, A and Village and Route, or sorry, downtown and Route 4, I would say no in the village.
So NAA,
Agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. Or either R or N in the village.
I say A.
Hey,
I say allow it.
it's A across the board. Why wouldn't you want retail in any of those three?
Why would you want retail in a residential area?
We're talking,
It's a village.
down South Main Street.
Yeah.
Up Maple, May, Stevens, Union.
Okay,
More neighborhoods
so
there, so wait, it may not fit as well, I think.
The
neighborhood.
level of the scale of, you know,
Right.
of use.
Mhm.
To me, in the village area is more professional office. It's a, you know,
Yeah.
lawyer's office, accountant's office, you know.
Road traffic.
You know, more of a
Light touch.
lower intensity, non-residential uses
Yeah,
I think the
Okay.
village.
Hmm.
We could have it R if you wanted to open the door to something. Or N.
I'm for in.
I'd suggest A across the board. It's been part of what's great about living downtown is being able to walk to all sorts of different businesses. So allowing them and exactly where they are is not as important as just sort of having places to walk to.
But I think, Eric, all the businesses that you walk to are either in downtown or Route 4, so. You know,
Not,
they're
not if I
in-
want to buy, not if I want to buy bait.
That's a home.
that's a home business.
It's a retail business.
It's a home business.
Again,
This might get to scale.
hung up on
definition.
definition.
We got scale.
Yeah.
Scale. I think this is thinking like your retail business,
I
like,
got a parking lot.
yeah,
I've got
parking lot, and it's gonna
hours.
use up more higher intensity.
I think what we look at is what is the primary use of the structure? Is it residential or is it retail? That, it's kind of the flip side of a mixed use building.
How about we meet in the
It's an
middle
R,
at RAA?
RAA, and the reason I say R is what,
I'll go with that.
okay, because the post office building, if it wasn't a post office, would be good for retail, and that's not in the downtown, it's in the village.
No, it's in the downtown.
Was it in the downtown?
Specifically grew up there. Sorry, this.
General service business.
Same thing.
No, this could be everything from
Fixing a lawnmower.
automobile,
The
lawnmower.
whole business
Oh,
in this
well, in
town.
that case, I go NAA. Or maybe NRA.
I would agree with that, maybe.
NRA? Okay.
I'd view it the same as the retail business.
This is one of those that's in the existing ordinance, right?
Right.
General service. Let's see what general service.
This is gonna give
I'm not sure.
zoning board more work and than less work.
Well, and I think yeah, maybe. But I think again, you can come back to the Rs and say, you know what, once you get the definitions and the scale figured out, you could say, no, that's really not allowed here, maybe potentially, depending on how it's
Okay.
defined. So some of the
Yeah.
Rs may end up disappearing one way or the other,
Okay,
either side of the
Do
table.
we want to put NRA with an asterisk there that we need to revisit this once
Yes.
the definition is refined?
well,
Absolutely.
we're gonna all the Rs anyways.
Funeral home.
NNA. Because how many funeral homes does a town need?
Well,
And we
wait a
already
minute.
have one. And it's not like a car wash where we have two.
The joke coming up.
I know, really.
I'll go along with that, just to move on.
And those need a lot of room.
What?
They need a lot of room too.
Yeah,
Okay,
Business offices.
and yeah,
Let's say NAA.
I say NAA.
that's what he just
That's what he
said. I heard that before.
Enunciate.
And AA, okay.
Any takers on RAA for that one? Nobody?
No,
NAA.
We're now officially at 25%, just in case you're.
Professional offices.
same thing.
Not really, because the fourth page.
I would say
I would say A across the board. That's what I can really envision in the village.
AAA,
I can really
Yeah.
envision a lawyer's office.
Oh, yeah.
An accountant's office, tax preparer's office.
Yeah. yeah,
perfect fit.
I think so.
Okay,
restaurant without a drive-through service.
yeah, how did you guys come up with
Well,
that?
so these are,
I know there's
It's a
logic.
sit-down restaurant,
well, no, there's no logic to this. This was just,
right,
you should have seen the list before.
right,
There were 12 different categories of restaurants. So
right.
I almost think we should just be one, and that whether it's a drive-in or not, you know that aside.
The traffic impacts are substantially different for a sit-down indoor restaurant versus a high turnover drive-through restaurant, which is why these are split out like this.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you do with something like Mickey's, which has a drive-up window?
It's above, yeah. Well, so's Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, both these kinds of restaurants would be allowed in Route 4.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think.
I agree.
Not allowed in the village at all.
Not allowed in the village.
And that leaves the downtown.
Gotta be an A. Gotta be allowed.
I would say A for without drive-through and maybe R with drive-through.
I would agree.
I'd go
Okay.
along with that.
Okay. I'll take it. Outdoor commercial recreation facility.
You saw the definition of this. This can
Yeah,
take
I
the
know.
form of everything.
Mini golf.
from a ski slope to,
Yeah,
just a lot of things. that could
Horses.
be-
I would do NNR.
Yeah,
do that.
yep.
For both indoor and outdoor, or just on outdoor? Sorry.
We're gonna come to the next one, because
Okay.
I think it's gonna be the same. I'm
It
hoping.
can be a yoga studio.
Yep,
We have
well,
one of
there's a,
those on Route 4 on the second floor.
Right, which is why it has to be an R, I think,
Which is,
because the other side of that is, it could also be horse stables.
it comes down to how we define that. term.
Right.
and we may need to break some of these out.
Yeah,
So we're on indoor right now.
yeah,
What's your pleasure?
NNA.
and NR,
Let's say NRA.
Let's see,
indoor commercial. In the downtown area,
Like a gym, I guess, or karate studio or.
Yeah.
Something like that.
NRR?
I think it should A on Route 4 when you allow
Yeah.
a gym or a karate studio or something like that out there.
If that's how we're gonna define that. Okay.
So
There
if
is
we
a
wanted to
gym
put
out
a,
there,
Yeah,
24 hours.
NRA?
NRA, I'd go along with that.
would you allow horse riding stable too? Because it's indoor?
feels like horses should fall under something that's.
I guess an indoor stable for horses probably would have an outdoor pasture paddock component.
Seems like it would be under the agricultural operations somehow.
yeah, it talks about
Okay.
equestrian
Okay.
stuff
Yeah.
later down.
But I don't have a problem with NRA.
Okay. Firearms.
EAA.
And.
No, we gotta put in already, then
I generally think that this is more appropriate in more rural parts of the community. Cause the noise can be off-putting in a more densely populated area.
It's just.
Let's put it in R3 then.
Right, that worked out well.
I think this should be no across the board. We allow it in, as you just said, rural areas and.
For these three districts, I think it's in.
Okay,
It is definitely, yeah.
okay.
So the reason that. I'm not even sure indoor firearms range was even in a list, but it
No.
could be, and part of the reason it isn't. is
Recreation.
Because it's an indoor commercial recreation.
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
Noise controlled, it's, you
Right.
know,
Motorsports or off-road vehicle facility.
oh no.
No everywhere.
Wedding and other event center.
I would say NNR.
And not NNA.
I think it would depend where on Route 4 someone were proposing it. In terms of parking, traffic.
That's self-regulating.
It more than likely would be a kind of a mixed use facility. You could do weddings there, you
Yeah.
could do a
Bingo.
bingo.
Yeah,
So NNA. Is that what people would say?
yeah.
Yeah.
Alright.
Because if you haven't got the parking, you're not gonna do it there.
NNA.
Yeah,
Theaters and performance venues.
From movie theater to stage theater, concert hall.
I guess I would do NRA.
How about NAA?
Agree with the end. Whitney Hall used to be a theater.
It is a theater, yeah.
It's NAA.
a year ago.
Yeah.
It was a theater,
The big
That was
building's
gonna be our
still there,
conference room.
right?
And the curtain's still there. Just the stage is shrunk.
NAA?
NAA.
So you can't do it in the village?
No,
No,
Shaker Bridge Theater can't be in the village.
it's not in the.
no.
They
It's in
be open
downtown.
anyway.
So I know they did, but, okay. I keep messing up village and downtown.
Well, so do I.
And we need to have a different, because it's always been Enfield Village. It's never been a downtown.
Great.
Well, we can have it.
To get with the program,
Jesus.
This is 21st century.
Need to have.
Seasonal campgrounds.
No, no way, never.
No, no.
Oh, I never know.
Brewery, distillery, or vintner facility. Wow, Tim. Vintner facility. Winemaking, huh? All right.
Let's make it ends across the board, really.
Yeah, I do NRA. And
Yeah,
that's
this is New England.
what?
Ends across the board. That might do in Missouri.
NRA.
NRA. Yeah,
Well, no, we've already had a brewery in downtown.
Which has been reviewed and allowed.
Right.
right, it's, it can be
We
allowed.
can't say no.
No,
because it's
we're
already-
not gonna say no, but we're gonna say they gotta come see us,
Yeah,
Which they did.
which they did.
yeah.
So it should be NAA. You're allowed to have a brewery, or you're allowed to have a distillery, or
I guess,
A distillery is a little bit of a different animal than a brewery,
Yeah.
though, in terms of its.
Output,
clientele.
Well, no,
the amount
The-
of space.
the amount of space required. And the,
well, in which case they won't propose to put one down there.
well, there's also things under significant pressure there and other safety considerations.
I disagree entirely,
With the distillery,
that there's a meaningful difference between the two of them.
I don't see it either.
Yeah,
yeah,
they-
they've got.
They've got big tanks.
Like nano breweries.
yeah,
I
they're
guess
both
they
under
do.
pressure.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those micro.
Yeah.
distilleries.
There are. That's fair.
attached to a restaurant.
So,
Yeah.
and AA on this?
Yeah.
Okay,
And that Bittner part, it's not likely, but, you know, you can stretch the imagination. Someone wants to actually produce wine, they don't grow it right there, of course.
I mean, you've basically covered,
The micro.
almost
Yeah.
every type of alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, it's not a-
It's not the same, right?
Right, exactly.
My mind goes to the type of facility that's next to Harpoon.
Right, yeah.
You know,
Right.
that being a distillery, you know what I mean? Like, but a good point on the micro distillery.
Seasonal recreation camps, NNN.
There is a day camp that goes on every day at UCR.
Well, but it's, there's no dedicated facility for that.
But it does operate as a seasonal day camp.
Yes. They come in 6 at a time to use the bathroom.
And it's on town property, so we don't really have to pay.
It's town, yeah.
Right.
Building involved.
I know, but I think seasonal rec camp, maybe the definition would say things like, with boarding, lodging, boarding, dining, archery ranges, swimming.
Or like
That's, I
your
think what that,
Summer camp.
yeah.
summer camp over.
Let's put that next to the distillery.
Mixed use.
You know, that goes down to the marijuana dispensary.
So
That-
we're doing what?
Seasonal rec camp.
Right. No in the village. Downtown.
I say no across the board and we define it as I described, not a town sponsored thing they're gonna do in the park.
Okay,
Computer camp would be under the category of educational.
Right.
Daycare, I guess the biggest
Yeah,
difference.
it all
is daycare.
depends on the.
It all
definition
depends,
here.
yeah. Gas stations. I'm sorry.
Fueling and charging
Fueling and
stations.
charging stations.
Well, obviously Route 4, yes.
Yeah,
I don't think we want a gas station downtown.
We got.
You have one.
We have
you already have,
Yeah.
right, 2 of them,
Jake's and,
George's.
Yeah, I guess we do.
NAA.
I guess so.
Auto equipment and RV sales, rental and service establishments.
NNA?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess so.
Boat sales, rental, service and storage.
Is that NNA?
I put down N across the board simply because there's no water.
Does make a difference, I can sell
You're,
them.
you're right, you're right. So
Yeah.
I would go
There is
to
water.
A.
Right?
Yeah, there's a river.
It's not navigable.
Wow.
Unless you're in a kayak,
Put a canoe in it.
maybe.
Right,
Look at the polygon, it
right,
goes down there.
goes down there. Yeah, goes down to the
you
river,
know, there,
goes down in the lakes.
who said paddle?
I did.
You did, so I didn't think about that, but you could have a little
Yeah,
kiosks downtown, rent kayaks, go in the lake from, right. right
Yeah,
there at
you
the
could.
South Main
Yeah.
Bridge.
Yeah,
yeah,
We wouldn't want to prohibit that.
The way the polygon is drawn,
it's on,
entirely
the
possible.
It's on the lake.
Yeah.
so. N,
NAA,
NRA,
Yeah, let's go on.
cause,
okay,
you know,
Yeah,
I wouldn't want a big marina with a storage yard. Assuming they could find, 5 or 7 acres.
right,
So. Another NRA.
Vet clinic, animal hospitals.
Say in our,
At AA, maybe.
I put NNA, I put NNA.
NNA is where I was at too.
and the NRA and that.
Yeah,
Downtown.
Mostly in the village. Yeah,
yeah.
So NRA,
Downtown are. Is that really a use that we would envision downtown? The animal hospital?
Give me NRA then?
NNA.
Cause they could have noise too, if they're having to.
yeah, I think I could go.
Okay. Boarding and breeding,
same thing.
yeah,
Yep, NNA. Well, you changed this one too.
Marijuana dispensary is actually
You
oriented.
changed it from what it was before.
I left that one out entirely, sexual oriented.
Well, it's still on the left. Yeah, we can see what it was before, but you changed it to. I think this is not applicable. Well, I guess,
Well,
is it medical?
medical's.
medical
it,
is,
it could be medical and, you know, at some point,
yeah.
maybe the legislature will decide that it should be legal. to
Yeah, but
sell it
the
everywhere.
governor will veto that.
Well,
And if they
at
do, they
some
wanna
point,
control
not
themselves.
necessarily in this biennium.
Right.
We could just leave this off entirely.
I
Probably a certain number of licenses
It's
issued.
called a retail.
I'm not sure we need this one.
Yeah, and
Maybe
I guess the reminder too is if you don't, cause your ordinance is permissive, right? So if you don't state it, it's not allowed. So.
Better to state it, cause like say, the medical one in, and then if the laws change, they're already grandfathered in.
Well, yeah, but if you put a medical one in, it's in. If you don't state it, I'll say it's a retail business.
Or they would go under
A farm
They
stand.
go under a farm stand, farm and firecrackers,
medical,
they go under medical,
if it's the medical, they go under
Pharmacy.
single.
right?
All right, so let's go down that rabbit hole then. If there was a medical one,
It's in the A,
where does it exist here, if anywhere?
Route 4,
Route 4,
NNR?
and A.
NNR, I would go off.
Okay,
R means we're gonna come back and discuss it.
pretty much.
Yeah,
It requires review.
Yeah,
However, you
review.
structuring that.
Golf course and country club is NNN,
nowhere.
doesn't fit.
Yeah, that's not highest and best use of land in that area we're talking about.
No. Only on the Canaan side.
You can't get there from here, though.
Sure you can.
Have to put a road in.
Um,
Light manufactured,
say,
NNA,
NRA?
NNA. I'm with Dan.
we have any light manufacturing going on right now?
we don't.
Depends on
The
the
last
last time.
time,
It
the
does.
last
It
light
depends
one was where 603 is.
There is some a little further up Route 4 in the old roller
What
rink.
were they
Right.
manufacturing there?
It was fiberglass and some
I
stuff.
thought it was a warehouse.
No, but they were doing light
Oh, they're,
manufacturing
okay,
20 years ago.
one
NNA?
other time.
NNA,
NNA?
Yeah,
Good with NNA?
yeah.
So the fellow that, turns the wooden bowls, what is he?
Richard
How do we
Homewood.
classify him?
Artisan.
Artisan,
Artisan.
Craftsman.
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
We may not have that on this. I'll put it here in the mark.
Yeah, we do craftsman shop.
Yeah.
yeah.
Heavy
Heavy
manufacturing, NNN.
I put down NNR,
You want a factory?
You could,
but it depends.
Yeah.
You know, there could be some. Okay,
Smelting.
Smelting and
No.
smokestack?
no, but how about one of the cabinet shops?
I don't think that's heavy
That's
manufacturing.
light
Yeah.
It's like,
How about, is circuit boards, something like a thermodynamic?
That would be,
That's heavy,
That's heavy, yeah.
that's heavy.
We wouldn't want that there.
You wouldn't want it in the A? You wouldn't want it in Route 4?
You have water sources back there, if they have
it
chemicals.
depends on the size, you know,
So it's an R
I put it as an R,
and an R?
and an R.
No.
I'd say, look at that again, just because we have water sources back in there
Yeah.
over that way. And then if you have a company that's bringing in chemicals for circuit boards, different things, and there's a spill, you just wiped out a good portion of our,
Well, that's why you need an R, because.
That's why it's an R,
Yeah.
you know, if
What
it's
about an N?
Or
But where?
heavy metal.
Oh,
That sounds like a good idea.
Well, warehouse and distribution, we have had the new equipment.
I'm talking about heavy manufacturing.
but let's settle heavy manufacturing. I mean, I guess I could go NNN, but I'd rather it be
I
NNR.
think it's difficult to envision a full-on heavy manufacturing factory of some sort that proximate to the amount of housing and the water resources that are there, and I don't know.
What if it was a factory that used 90% robotics to make its product?
It wouldn't matter. You still got chemicals and materials deliveries and shipping and, robots not necessarily quiet. The factory is noisy either way. I think what we mean by heavy manufacturing goes out in the CI district, and
Okay,
they're just not gonna happen here in Enfield.
So triple N.
warehouse and distribution center.
No.
Can I get an A in there? In Route
As
4?
long as it's on Route 4
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
We've
N
had
on the
those
other two.
Would anybody be open to NNR? Some of these distribution centers are,
A lot of
Mega
traffic
projects.
coming and going at night.
I mean, you're talking about 1 million square foot buildings, some of these.
How fast you
distribution
can get your
centers.
Amazon packages.
And with buku Amazon vehicles coming in and out of there constantly,
Yeah.
not that that would necessarily happen here, but the scope and scale of, if you go to Pettingill Road in Londonderry and look at the size of some of the distribution centers that are there.
the Amazons don't go all day. They all go,
But it's
they
not-
all
it's
leave
not
at
just
10
Amazon
o'clock.
There, it's FW Web, it's
Oh, I know.
Balance. It's,
So they all leave at 10 o'clock in Hookston.
These are
Well-
major, enormous facilities.
I know.
Well, as opposed to what we did have that would be a warehouse of distribution was in the new equipment shop at the, McConnell Road, Lovejoy Brook Road.
Right.
Sells machinery.
Mhm.
That used to be a plastics warehouse and distribution
Yeah.
operation. A little thing, something like that at that scale. Yeah. So maybe we need a.
I'll go with
It's an
R.
R. Yeah, it's an
heavy
R.
and a light warehouse, I don't know.
Let's just say R.
Yeah.
NNR.
Good.
R leaves the door open
Yeah,
Right,
if it fits the context of
Yeah.
Enfield.
and then R on the next one too? Assembly and packaging?
I did NNA, but you may be right about the R.
Yeah,
NNR.
and then R, cause you could have a lot of,
Yeah,
you're gonna have, cause it's assembly and packaging, you're gonna have a lot of trucks coming in, a lot of trucks going out,
Linda, are we over halfway?
almost.
I've turned the page.
Yeah, I think that's,
Yep,
we're doing okay here.
research and testing labs.
I
Put it on
would
the
do
scale.
NRA or maybe NRR.
NRR.
Go in and all.
NRA,
Well, we
Actually had a.
have or had a research and design thing
in the downtown
in the downtown where the coffee shop
is going
is
in.
going to be.
Yeah.
So it's gotta be an R for that. And
Yeah, because those don't, there's not a parking issue with those.
it's employees only, you know,
Employees
you're not getting a lot of visitors.
No,
And I would just outright allow it in Route 4 because.
yeah,
You know, your parking, your available land and stuff would be the limiter.
Yeah.
All right.
NRA,
okay,
Everybody okay with that?
yep,
And
only if you let me do N on the next one,
And on the
Sure,
next one, for
Dan.
sure, yeah.
I'll humor you.
although,
Yeah, that's an easy one.
you know, behind Shaker Valley is great sand.
I'll propose AAA for the next one.
Which is
Craftsman shop.
Craftsman.
Yeah, I would go with that.
Oh, yeah,
Contractor's yard, though, that's a little different.
that's an N, I think.
NNA.
Yeah, maybe NNA.
Not sure why that's in industrial and transportation. Yeah, this paragraph, I'll move that.
I think it's the number here.
But NNA is where we're gonna go with that.
Yeah,
Forestry products, NNN.
sawmill, yeah, it's an
Sawmills
NNN
and
because of
all
the
that.
sawmill,
I would say NNN.
NNN.
Okay. This. Yeah, I kind of accidentally got left in here, but Nate and I were having a discussion about whether or not. When the chart that actually appears in the table in the zoning ordinance,
Right,
you could do things like. Put the definition of the use right here, like we have with this forest products thing. Or you could say forest products and then have all of your definitions in the definitions. Don't have to decide that tonight, but.
right,
You can see
Yeah.
that. How easier this makes it. But then again, we don't want that definition to be in two separate places.
Yep.
You always have a coordination problem.
mhm.
Go ahead.
Storage for coal, fuel oil and bottled gas. That's probably only in the CI.
NNR.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
NNR probably and A in
Yeah.
the CI, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause it's already there.
NNR.
Yeah,
NNR.
it's already in the CI. Essential services, that's AAA across the board.
Well, they are essential for a reason.
That's right.
Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
For utility poles, substation exchanges,
They're essential services.
they are essential services, but are we talking about a storage yard for them? And vehicle parking for them? You don't want that in downtown.
I think it's just the things.
Yeah,
No,
this is like the.
This is the service
When you're
itself.
downtown, the little consolidated communications.
Box.
You know,
Right.
Yeah,
Building.
shack
The little
there,
building,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it's
sort of
back.
thing. Yeah,
Right.
One right next to the police station.
right, exactly. It's right
Right.
there.
Actually, we don't have any choice above the first three.
No, you don't.
You really don't. No,
Oh, and just. Skip over that less than so many feet in height. That was
right.
I meant to drop that out of there, although we might want that, I don't.
I'm not sure, but I think utilities, you know, utility
Right.
towers and stuff.
They're all
I
AA.
don't think we have
Yeah.
any control over that. I
No,
think
we just have to see the site plan.
it's all state regulated.
Yep,
Or we could just not address it and then. Someone comes in and says, well, the state reg said you're allowed to do this.
Yeah.
right.
Should we just leave it out?
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be in there necessarily.
So leave out the, which one?
All three of them probably.
Essential services actually, all three of these are in the existing ordinance, right?
That's what I was just
They're
wondering.
all
if it's
in there.
Yeah,
the only thing.
So we just scratching all those through.
Essential services are also exempted from setbacks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
Which makes sense.
I mean, maybe
As long as they have barriers.
let's put an asterisk next to this one and come back to it.
Yeah.
Some thought. Can we skip down to church?
Yeah, let's,
Stop.
Yeah, it's A's, yeah.
A's across the
Yeah,
board.
Lots of Supreme Court case law.
right?
Cemetery,
well, we got lots of
We-
those.
well, there's Oak Grove. Is that in the ball?
Oh, yeah. Oak Grove, Lakeview, they're both in the
Oak Grove's in the Village District.
village. Lakeview is probably in the Route 4 district.
I think it is.
Route 4 doesn't go up that district, doesn't go up that far, does it?
Goes up to the roll.
Goes up to the Rollerick. So it does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
So, AA.
it's 8AA.
Well, if you
I
have
don't, you,
downtown,
I don't think so.
We have one downtown. So, you know, we don't wanna take up land, very wise, and we wanna build a house living.
yeah, so Oak Grove is in the village, so that's an A, right?
Yeah.
And downtown. And then what in Route 4?
Lakeview Cemetery.
Okay, so A.
hey,
A and A.
Now, we have existing, that would be grandfather.
Right.
But if we say we're gonna allow another cemetery in the village district,
Yes, yeah.
you know,
Not a-
do we really wanna do that?
NNA,
And then
Ed.
NNN? Well,
I would do
Well, I guess-
NNR,
who's
but
coming in with a new?
I was gonna say, is that
Yeah.
their business?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's NNN.
Isn't there also pretty good state regs on that? Prohibitions of burying people.
Does Oak Grove have capacity in the future to?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
120
That's what I
more.
thought too. I mean,
You got a brand new-
that's going to fill the need for quite some time.
Well, the countryside's going to fill
The one up
for the
here.
town.
We have a brand new cemetery.
There, no.
Right.
From,
In the
there's a.
R5 district.
Yeah, and that one's in, like, stuff.
Park, sports and recreation.
Yeah. Okay, is there public fields?
Doesn't say that.
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to
Yeah, I
differentiate
know.
between what this is and what an outdoor commercial recreational
Right.
facility is.
well, if we're talking public fields, they don't belong in the zoning reg because the
Right.
town can put them wherever they
Right.
want.
And if they're private fields, it's part of an outdoor commercial recreation facility, right?
Not
So,
necessarily,
So
Institutional.
depending on how you define it, but yeah,
not necessarily.
well, what else would it be, Dan?
If I give you $1 million and I don't give it to the town and I say, here, go use it, it's not commercial.
Yeah, somebody's
That's
vacant
all
lots
for
and
it.
they,
Yeah.
when somebody
They
could go. to
vacant
that
lot,
land
they
and make it a
they
park.
donate
Yeah,
the land
okay.
for a park.
It's been sitting there and.
Leave you to your deliberations.
Right,
Oh. We have a number of parks and
Yeah.
sports and rec fields within the downtown and the village
yeah,
already. And, I'm sure we have anything on one. I don't think so.
We don't.
But if someone wanted to create a park on Route 4 in lieu of a housing development, that's kind of the question.
right, it
Yeah,
is.
so like that whole area in back of, Raphael's Cucina.
Right.
That doesn't really lend itself to housing because of the floodplain.
Yeah.
But.
But I
it
could put a
lend-
lakeside, I could put a riverside park
It could be a park.
where you could put your kayak in or your canoe. or-
but realistically, who is creating a park there? the town.
the town,
And the town is exempt from its own zoning.
Right.
right?
The town could put a park wherever the town would like to put a park.
So we delete the line entirely?
Well, no, because it will apply to the R1, 3 and 5.
Right.
Right.
RRR,
I like that.
Yeah, for now, let's just do that.
same thing with beaches.
Boat launches.
Well, there wouldn't be any boat launch other than in the village.
No, I could launch them out in the river in the Route 4.
Okay.
Oh, where? Where?
The end of McConnell,
Yeah, and the McConnell
end of
Road.
McConnell, it's already there.
It's not a sanctioned boat launch or anything, it's just a place.
Isn't prohibited.
You
Right,
could create there.
you could create, it won't take much, you just.
Boy, we are down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, really down the rabbit hole.
I said that was an interesting one, because where does the state come in with that
Yeah,
too,
and-
depending on the
and I
water,
think-
body of water?
you know, paddle sports, kayaks, canoes launching,
Yeah,
that's not really what's meant by boat launch.
I know,
So maybe in the definition, it would define it as a, you know, boat on a trailer,
Motorized.
motorboat. sort
right,
of thing.
so put it across as ours right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can see.
general government is
They're exempt.
the same thing, they're exempt.
Exempt from their own zoning.
So you
Yeah.
don't put them in,
Hospital or nursing
I
home,
mean, if you put N somewhere, it
right,
doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
stand,
Hospital, nursing homes.
Well, it says hospital or clinic.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong side. Hospital or clinic.
I would go NRA on that one.
like that.
Yeah,
NRA
NRA,
on hospital.
sure.
So are we striking general government?
we are striking
Yeah.
the line
Okay, yes,
Okay,
because they can do whatever they want,
they can.
right.
and they will.
I don't see a hospital coming in, but a clinic I can
Yeah.
see.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Can we just strike hospital?
Well, there might be a hospital use in the CI zone, for instance.
Yeah, okay.
it could be in the R4. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, in the, Route 4,
yeah,
outpatient surgery.
that's why NRA.
Yeah, NRA.
Managed care facility, assisted living facility, or nursing home.
What is a managed care facility? By information.
Managed care is the middle of the three. Managed care is a
Oh, okay. Yeah, got it.
Is it a reverse?
Kendall.
It's assisted,
Yeah.
managed and nurses.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
So I would do RRA
yeah,
or maybe NRA.
Say in,
And
yeah, you could have assisted living facility in the.
Firehouse.
In the village.
well, and to your point, there has been Visions through Creative Housing has done a group homes
Oh, yeah,
in residential.
in residential areas. Yeah,
I
So-
think they like that.
they like it a
do.
lot.
Do,
So
So-
one in Dover is like, there's one in Dover,
Well,
like that, there's one in.
RRA?
what
All right.
that is this comes down to definition. That is a different animal than a nursing home,
Oh, it is,
right?
Yeah,
but it is an assisted living,
Yeah, it is assisted living,
right?
but
But
a nursing home in this implies a very different.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think of a group home like Vision
Right.
does. I don't think of that as an assisted living place.
Well, they actually do have a lot of assistance.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it's not, for us old people.
Right. Exactly.
What if we added
Rowdy.
group home as a fourth
What
category?
if we put an asterisk next to this and
And
did a
move
little
on.
more wordsmithing and defining?
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Recovery and Treatment Center.
What is Ann's place defined as?
Group home, I believe, or.
I don't
No,
think
it's
so.
like-
I think it's just
Affordable
just
housing.
affordable housing.
Just affordable
Oh, it
housing.
is, it was for women with children.
No, yeah, not women. People with
People,
children.
I'm sorry.
Where's this? Ann's Place?
It's
At
Right
the
across,
bus
right
stop,
downtown. Bus
Across
stop
from
is
Hughes
across
Park.
from the community building. Okay.
Nice white buildings right next to
Yeah.
it.
Very nicely done.
Well
And
done.
there was a big brouhaha over that.
There was, and I think maybe even to this day, is the police department required to report on annual responses to Ann's Place?
Yeah.
There was all sorts of hoops that had to be jumped.
Oh,
through.
yeah.
Oh, and they had to have a resident, an employee here 24 hours a day.
Right.
She did that about 2 weeks.
Right.
And that's a lot of years ago.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, that's got some recovery and treatment center, and I don't.
But that's not a recovery.
But-
Okay.
Yeah, but
You know,
I'm not
but
sure
like
you can.
what's the, this one is interesting because this is the type of thing where they,
This is considered disability.
well, but also.
I don't
like, what's-
believe you can,
like, this is the type of thing where they would, you're seeing more and more of the type of setting that is a
right.
Enfield Village type of setting.
Oh, yeah.
Integrate people into.
Integrating
exactly.
people into residential areas for their recovery and,
And I think it's an AAA.
so it's,
I think it's,
Well, it may
Yeah,
be a
it's-
special exception.
I think it's gotta be RRR, which is what I
RRR.
put.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really fit the traditional
Yeah.
definition of a quote, family residence.
Right.
And I know that the alcohol and drug recovery
That-
houses are a federally protected
Yeah.
class.
Yeah.
So
And
you can't discriminate against
Yeah.
them.
exactly,
just
you don't,
got-
you don't
but
wanna.
Sometimes consider them as clinics.
it just got
No,
covered. It
no.
just got covered under the new state law on communal living.
Right. Which may or may not stand,
Right, may or may not get
get signed.
signed, but I,
We'll just put ours across the board for now, it leaves the
Yeah.
door
Right.
open.
yeah,
Homeless shelter. Homeless services centers.
I'm going NNR.
We should go NRR.
Yeah.
NRR.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
NRR. Everybody okay with NRR?
Mhm.
Animal shelters.
I might feel better RR, but I can go NR. I'm not sure why it wouldn't be allowed. A homeless shelter wouldn't be allowed. in
Would
the
you
village.
want it closer to where services exist?
And transportation.
Yeah, and transportation options too.
Walking.
Yeah,
Distance.
Yeah.
Like
You know what
Lebanon or
happened.
White River.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, services in Enfield's context are really Route 4 in downtown, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't know. NRR,
NRR.
animal shelters. Didn't we cover animal? Something?
clinic.
You know, we talked about vet clinics already.
I would say no.
the animal shelters, I did NNA. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't have one on four.
Like a humane society? animal-
Yeah,
Yeah,
that kind of
Yeah.
animal shelter.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
You didn't want that around all the houses.
Well, it wouldn't be on Route 4. Well, it could be, but
Well, we have one already in it's in the CI and I don't know that,
It's where it ought to be.
I don't know that we're gonna have another one anytime soon, other than that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Dog park?
NNR,
Oh, no, or.
NNR.
Yeah,
like we need 2 dog parks in town.
Well, there is a special dog beach down at Lakeside Park.
right,
You're right,
but it's not a park.
and that's town land.
But that'll
Right.
end up, that'll eventually end up being in the Lake District. So maybe we dodge that bullet for now.
Eventually be in the lake.
No, it will stay in the R1 district. actually.
Right, yeah, it'll just be an overlay.
Social service clubs.
That's your Elks Club.
Yeah.
American Legion.
Yeah.
Odd Fellows. I always wanted to join the Odd Fellows.
It wasn't fun.
It wasn't, you were?
It
Yeah.
wasn't fun.
Were you too normal?
Yeah,
I did NRA on that one.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's reasonable. NRA.
yeah. Public or private schools,
Well, public schools are gonna do what they want.
exactly.
Yeah,
Private schools?
I did NAA.
So a private school could be as small as a Montessori kindergarten.
Yeah.
With 5 kids in it.
This,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or it could
really,
be a Head Start
it really
program.
depends on the definition here.
It's
If
hard.
you had a Montessori
Right.
school that's, a handful of kids or something and.
Yeah.
That could be something that fit in the village district, without,
I mean, basically, the Head Start program was in where the laundromat was.
can we put an asterisk next to this one and say, it kind of, we
Yeah.
need to define it, and it kind of depends on.
Well, but to be consistent, we may want to drop the word public.
Yes, drop the public and define private school.
Right,
Library or museum?
Well,
every
it
place,
should be AAA because
yeah,
museums can be very small.
Agreed. AAA.
Okay.
Daycare center, I'd also suggest AAA.
gonna have to, yeah,
I think that's a use that's very compatible with the neighborhood setting,
Yep.
even in the village district.
yep,
Yeah, and it needs a site plan review anyhow,
right,
even if it's,
by law.
yeah. So, yeah, we'll do it. AAA.
Non-commercial agricultural operations.
I
It
think
goes,
the
and what
green-
is it?
I think
Yeah.
the green ones just don't apply for
And
these
was it-
3 categories.
Yeah,
Well, the trouble I was having there was small scale part-time. The part-time was the thing that was throwing me.
Right,
You should be smart, be small scale year round.
yeah,
So what do we call this? And I said, well, really I think what we're talking about here is that someone wanted to have a hobby farm.
If you talk to the Blue Ox guy, he said he was part-time. Because he was
Was an engineer.
yeah,
what was
He
that?
engineer or-
Was that non-commercial?
No, that
He
was
was selling.
commercial.
that was commercial.
Operation.
Tim, what if I put in a flock of chickens and a rooster?
Yeah, so
I'm gonna be throwing eggs at your
Let's-
house.
Let's put an
But he'll have
asterisk
the
next
eggs
to
for
this
you.
one and,
That's right.
and come back to it with a definition. And think about the definition. Like Tim, there is something there, which,
Right,
not quite there yet.
Well,
but in 43, we're
Pellegrinos,
probably not gonna find.
Pellegrinos, when they were there, were the last 2, like, not greenhouse, but it was commercial.
commercial agricultural operations,
There's.
yeah,
Pellegrinos.
Plants and,
he was retail.
He's retail. It's
He
a
was
store.
retail.
he didn't grow any of that stuff out back and bring it
No,
out.
no, this is
nobody
you're
grew
growing it,
those, the
I don't-
weird plants.
commercial agricultural is you're growing it and selling it.
Yeah.
Somebody to it, you're the wholesaler
Or retail,
or retailer, yeah,
but the operative thing is you're growing it and you're selling it.
right,
RNR?
Um, So I'm looking at this saying, all right, we're talking about the village downtown Route 4, the area with water and sewer where we're trying to build houses.
Yeah,
And we really don't want to encourage commercial agricultural operations. It's gonna take up a,
But that could be a small thing.
it could be,
Again,
but
it
it-
kind of depends on how you're defining it. Yeah.
yeah, I
mean,
think,
Could put a square footage requirement on it.
yeah,
Then commercial means I'm growing or farming something to sell it, period, no matter what the scale is.
right,
exactly, so maybe we do need that.
This needs a definition.
yeah.
And I'm registered as a business as opposed to the guy who's just
Not a
selling,
fruit stand,
selling,
Right.
eggs at the end of his driveway.
right,
Garlic in his backyard.
right.
Forest products, didn't you do this one too?
Yeah, that's earlier.
Well, that was a salt.
That was processing.
That was the
This is the
processing
growing.
piece, not, this is the growing piece.
Yeah, so in our district, are there any,
That's an R5, that's an R.
I would say A for village and.
You would say A?
For growth and harvesting of forest products?
I don't think so, Tim.
Yeah, anybody with a tree farm, there are some large stands of trees, up Maple Street.
Yeah.
The guy who used to run a Christmas tree farm up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
But that's outside the village district now.
no, that's.
No, it's not.
It
It's
isn't,
in the village,
goes all the way,
It all goes to the
Yeah.
gated line.
oh,
yeah.
The proposed.
Does that even fall under the planning board's purview if somebody wants to log their land? That's a permit by notification, isn't it? Just-
Yeah, that's
You
growth
can
and
log your land
harvesting,
and-
that's not sale.
Intent to cut.
That's the kind, it's not, because they're not talking about sales. They're talking about growing and harvesting.
The planning board's not reviewing.
No,
I think you may be.
not at all. Yeah,
Yeah, I think we can strike this one.
just strike it right
The
out.
line.
How about nurseries, orchards and vineyards?
That's a different animal.
It is.
Um,
Nurseries, orchards and vineyard.
well, the Route 4 district would have room for someone to have a greenhouse and grow.
So with the
Yeah.
village district,
Pardon me?
village
The
district.
village
would do.
district too, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a little place in Piermont that's a nursery. If you've
Right.
ever been by there, it's like right on when you come into Piermont and
Yeah.
it's a small scale little nursery that.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
and I think they probably have a retail operation around there.
it's probably just the person that lives there. You know,
Right.
you
Yeah.
pull up and,
It's a
you know,
home
take a look
business.
around, yeah.
Yeah,
So
But it is a
you could.
nursery, yeah.
you could do it.
this is, we just gotta come up with better definitions for all this stuff.
So how about
Great start though.
ANA,
RNA?
RNA, yeah, that's good.
I'll go R, okay.
Next one says farmers markets, but what about a farm stand?
That's in produce stand, which was
Oh,
before
okay.
that,
We didn't,
because that has that actually has a definition already as to what is a farm stand.
can we take commercial greenhouses and kind of think of that with a better definition with the commercial agricultural operations? I think we should
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
those two together.
Let's do
Yeah.
that,
This whole section needs.
yeah. Yeah, because they would both be the same, really.
And our discussions would be very different about this topic when we're talking about the R3 and 5 and
Oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
conservation district.
Farmers market,
I'm not even sure that needs to be
I-
there.
Route 4.
I'm gonna
That's
say-
not necessarily a government thing.
No,
how about RAA?
RAA.
I was gonna do NAA. But I would do R, I guess. But I guess I'd be concerned about the increase in traffic
Yeah, that's a,
in the village
Downtown.
district. Not so much downtown because
they're already doing it downtown.
they're already, well, but again, that's public property they're on.
And there's a parking lot in front of it.
Yeah,
I think thing too is that's temporary, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes zoning ordinances will say like these
Right.
temporary things are allowed wherever kind of thing, whereas these land uses are looking at more
Right.
permanency.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
That's true. Yeah, this would be, a farmer's market that was a permanent
Yeah.
installation, which I
Right.
think would be more of a.
Like Norwich has.
Like an N in the village or
Yeah, I would do maybe NAA.
but it's kind of confusing because the average public is gonna look at the term farmer's market and they're gonna think of the thing that happens on Saturday for 3 hours. And,
Right.
Yeah.
And then,
like,
kinda-
yeah, definition have to.
Kind of suggests to me that having a definition.
Right.
Block.
I think that's a
might
great
be
idea.
Useful.
Yeah.
Immediately say, oh, that's what it is.
do we need farmer's market?
We may not.
maybe not.
Let's strike it.
It's kind of a thing like a fair.
It's an event.
It's an event.
Well, except Woodstock, Vermont and Norwich. It's not an event, it's there's structures there
Right.
and permanent. I mean,
And we would call that probably a retail.
Right.
right.
Okay. So like we struck out from, like the existing ordinance has fairs and
Right.
community events. We just don't think that should even be in the mix.
I agree,
Yeah, I mean,
because if it was a permanent amusement park, that's one thing, but if it's a fair that comes and stays for a week and then moves on to the next town, either we have the space for it or we don't. And they would have to get some sort of a permit for a temporary event, so. It becomes an administrative decision, really.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that.
Okay, so,
yeah, I'm not even sure you need a permit.
so this next version,
You
Lots of land wanted to do it.
need a sign permit for it, though.
No, because it's temporary and it's directional.
so this next version, it's okay. We'll drop this column on the left.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Fill in all this for the.
Yep.
We'll move this column over there. Anyway, fill out all that, include then the other districts.
mhm,
And we'll have a second temporary table that will show the old terms and the old ordinance and then the new terms, which will transfer here. That sound right? Okay.
Yeah. That's
All right.
that's present. I think you'll find.
I think we covered some ground.
a lot.
Yeah, that's really good. I think once these definitions get fleshed out a little more, then you'll see, because I know we were talking about like boundaries of the map, right, or the boundaries of the zones, and then I think we'll really be able to see. Do we have a route for west and east? And so,
Eric, are you still awake?
Probably had his hand
Yes,
up.
I'm still here and listening.
He's been talking the whole time, but he's been on mute.
I'm not sure we could change those. Because if we're not working on 1, 3 and all of those,
No, but I think what you do is, you just make sure that the new terms accomplish the same thing as.
right, right,
Terms change.
the terms change. But I'm not even sure if you could do that without rewriting
Well, okay.
those.
you,
My theory is, and we talked about this in the group, I'm not sure we did in the whole board, but this form, or this
Yeah.
table would replace all of the narratives in each of the districts that talk about what's allowed and not allowed.
Yeah. We talked about that as a group, and I think
Okay.
everybody favored it.
Right.
So, having done that in the Word document version of our old ordinance, what you end up with is a very small piece of, I mean, hardly
Right.
two or
I
three
know.
paragraphs.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, Point is, and we're gonna put it in a different format as well, so the net result is what we want, I think, is that we're not changing what's used, or what's allowed or not allowed in any of the old districts.
Right.
Right.
We don't want that controversy. Okay? We'll do that some years later, but anyway. And I don't see why that wouldn't. That accomplishes what we want to do.
I
Yeah.
agree.
And you could like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
I'd say, and you could, make the table and present it with these 3 new districts and leave the other zones for now too, if you felt like it was too confusing for the public, for everyone to kind of grasp. And then later, then you would take the other old districts and just put them into that table
And then
in the
change.
next year.
Right, and change
And
the other
change
ones.
it,
That's what,
maybe
yeah.
potentially, the
We
phase.
could do that, but
But-
the thing that bothers me about that approach is that what if we don't make any changes for another 2, 3 years after we make this new ordinance? It's got all these old sections in the old original format, with all the old terms. And we may be 3 years before we ever get that stuff changed.
So if we just stay till midnight, we can get another whole meeting in tonight.
I think there's a, I think there's
Sorry, Tim.
The problem. You can't change anything in those sections without,
it'd have to go to the ballot.
anything you change in those other sections has to go to the ballot.
Well, we're intending for that. That's,
No, I mean, would have to go this year.
that's what we mean to, or at least that's the way I envision this thing. This new
Yeah, I mean, we
ordinance,
can do it.
I think the other thing too is eventually here we might want to loop legal in to just see about how the processes need to go, because I think it's very descriptive on when you're changing zoning ordinances, how it needs to go to ballot. And when different articles are changed, they have to be separate votes or not, or if it's one kit and caboodle. So I think there's that conversation too eventually,
well,
but.
yeah, okay, well, you may be right. But what I envisioned was, the question is more or less,
Mhm.
Right.
shall we eliminate the zoning ordinance adopted in 1990 last,
And replace it with,
and replace it with this one?
right.
That's the question.
yeah, and subheading. The only things that we're changing are R1 or the village.
Yeah.
Downtown and Route 4. The-
Yeah, but
the
it's-
rest-
That'd
The
be the
rest-
narrative.
The rest are as they used to be.
Just a
Whereas-
different format.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Easier to understand, clear,
Yeah,
but says the same thing.
I agree that that's what we should do, but I think we should get some feedback from the public in our next public engagement activity.
And we also have to remember about the changing districts. If they're less than X number of people, then we have to send out.
And the only one that could possibly refer to is the CD thing.
Was getting rid of
Right.
the Route 4 district.
That was the one.
Because
Yeah.
right now there's a Route 4
We've
district.
been there before. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we couldn't do it last year.
CD Route 4.
Right.
Yeah,
because you're moving people from one district to another district.
Yeah, and that'd be a question for council as well, because I,
What's
the
don't want
wording, I think the
this.
verbiage I read
don't want
was
fees.
if it's,
You're moving people from a Route One district to a Enfield Village district.
Yeah, but that district is huge. You got way more than 100.
Okay. How about the downtown district?
That's the one I think where we may run into that.
That's where we're gonna run into it too, is the downtown district.
So there's an administrative process that has to happen.
Yeah. And it's just the sending out notices to them.
And then if the article fails, we still got the old ordinance.
Get the old ordinance. Right.
It's not gonna fail. Because we are gonna get input from the public. We're gonna ask them if we heard them correctly, if they like it. It's not gonna fail. It's too big to fail.
Then we may want to decide on asking a question, which is the one to get rid of the Route 4 district, the Route 4 district, separate from the entire package. Because I think you could get that to pass anyways. And then we've got what we want as a base for going forward. If it doesn't, if they both pass, you're all set.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We'll talk about that down the road.
tactical.
That's a tactical issue. Right. Or do you just go through and do the whole package and say, go for it?
Okay,
Minutes.
minutes.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes. As written.
Second that.
Is there any discussion?
Can I just say one thing? Line 97. Mr. Miller suggested using the ITE land use codes list and then the sentence kind of ends. There's not even a period or anything. I would suggest, just can we say, Mr. Miller suggested using the ITE land use codes list as a starting point, period, because I don't think
Right.
You know.
No, yeah, I
Instead, like,
agree.
we must, you know,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like.
Yep.
I just
You hear
offered,
that,
I
McKee?
offered that as a starting
Yeah.
point for discussion.
Yeah.
okay, any other comments?
thank you.
Well, we need a second.
I seconded
He's
it.
like,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Linda.
that's okay. Well, it's getting
All right.
late.
Roll call here, cause Eric is, are you still there, Eric?
He's there.
I am. I vote aye.
Good. Linda,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
Bill,
Sure.
is that an aye?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Approved unanimously as amended. Next, engineering firm discussions. Rob, you wanna? What should I?
We're working on an RFP for,
RFQ.
RFQ.
Isn't that what you were gonna work?
request for quote,
Request for qualifications?
Qualifications.
qualifications.
Okay, oh God.
Yeah.
Didn't want to go with the city engineer or the town's engineer.
You have to put it out, I think.
Said it had to.
Eric said
Gotta go,
we
yeah.
gotta go to 3 people anyhow.
Right.
And I, you know, Rob and I talked about what, 4, maybe 5 different engineering firms. And what I would like to do is work with, or, you know, review their qualifications, find someone or find a firm that has extensive experience on big projects on steep wetlands.
So the difference between an RFQ and an RFP is an RFQ is based solely on the firm's qualifications.
Yes,
Right.
Nothing to do with price.
Right.
right,
Price isn't a
Exactly.
consideration. Price is often one of the factors in a request for
That's right.
proposals.
right,
Right.
Request for qualifications, you don't talk about price, you don't talk about the
That's right.
billing rates. you don't talk
Exactly.
about Anything you're selecting the most qualified.
exactly.
Right.
That's what we're looking for.
Yep.
somebody who we think has a wealth of experience that is significantly better than anyone else that we will interview. And once we decide on that, we talk to the applicant and we say, this is who we decided on. Do you have any objections? And they should say no. And we do a contract. And, done deal.
All right.
Well, it's just, I would rather not. Maybe you're not gonna do this anyway. This doesn't have to come back to the board for approval, right?
I believe it does because the board is actually the entity that does the hiring, the town does the actual contract, and the applicant does the actual paying.
Well, so, okay, I would prefer a small committee, do the reviews, come back to the board with a recommendation. And that if for some reason we
Yeah, we can
don't
do it that
approve the
way.
recommendation, then okay, now we're,
Sure. That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I was originally thinking, Rob and I would look at all of them and we would bring them all to the board. And Rob and I would say, these are the pluses, these are the minuses, go through each one. Which one do you think we should?
We can come with a recommendation.
What's that?
I said, we can come with a recommendation.
I think,
We could.
and I'm fine with a committee
Yeah.
of one.
Yeah.
I love committees.
Just to come,
No,
come back
it's
with a
gonna be a
rec,
committee of two at least.
Okay.
yeah, come back with a recommendation.
Yeah, we could do that.
Another board member? You and Rob?
What? Me and Rob, I think.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I mean.
If anybody else would like to join, certainly welcome.
What are we looking for? 2 weeks, give them to come back with a,
We should be able to have a,
To give firms to come back with a statement of qualification?
Yeah,
well, we're a month out from the meeting
Yeah,
with Larrabee Farm. So if you
Usually,
Right,
usually
you
wanna
don't
give
need for
them,
the first,
give them a month.
give them a
Give them a
month,
month.
yeah.
No. Qualification statement, they've already got written. The corporate literature's together.
Yeah.
A little, give them a week.
No,
you won't.
Literally.
no, it's summertime, people are on vacation.
So most of the time in an RFQ process, you give them 3 to 4 weeks, about a month. Because
proposal,
generally,
huh?
well, no, statement of qualifications. Generally, in an RFQ, you want to build an opportunity for them to ask questions and then have the town or whoever the sponsor is answer those questions.
Do that there.
You do it in the RFQ process too.
And you,
I think something like this deserves more time than.
yeah,
It's gonna be up to David.
And it's gonna be,
At the end of the day, we just need the engineer here before the.
exactly. We need the engineer here before they come in with their final, when they come in with their final application.
So you guys work out the schedule. and
Yeah,
okay,
Come back to the board with a recommendation.
we will do that.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to be in on that? I wish Bill were here, or Ben rather.
Yeah, he might have had to slip out. I don't know.
He's slipped out at 8:30.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, let's you and I plod on and, pull together the RFQ and get it out to the firms that we talked about. Public comments. Dr. Theis still on?
No.
no.
Okay. Next meeting, July 23rd.
I'll say I will not be here for the next meeting. I will be at a planning board meeting, just on the other side of the table at a different planning board that night. So
Yeah.
sorry, I try not to miss meetings, but I have a work-related planning board meeting.
That's
Whoa.
understandable.
Some
Um,
cool stuff or what?
I'm helping the town of Deerfield with impact fees. So I'm writing their impact fees. Speak with them on that night.
Okay.
So they happen to have the same exact meeting schedule as we do, so.
They copied ours, clearly. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
All right, roll call. Eric,
Eric, aye.
Linda,
Hi.
Dan,
Aye.
David, Tim, Nate,
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
We are adjourned
He was gonna hold it up.
at 9:10.
Oh.